It is October 10th, 2023. It is our Tuesday 9 o'clock board briefing meeting. Please let the record reflect that we have all 5 commissioners present. Our executive director will be here shortly, and the rest of our executive management team is present. So we will go ahead and get started with Chandra Fox.
Hey, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So a lot of good news this morning. We have a lot of good stuff going on. The long-term recovery group is finding their footing and really starting to pull things together in terms of what the recovery outlook is going to be. I don't know if you saw the Spokane Chiefs game. We get the first responders night, and the Chiefs have committed to supporting fundraising for the long-term recovery group throughout the season. So we'll have more opportunities for some fundraising through the hockey games, which is super. They're hosting their first bus tour today. The intent is to have several of these throughout the fall for local electeds, for funders, for folks who have a need to see and understand the footprints of the fires. And as they schedule additional dates, we'll be sharing those out if any of you are interested in going on the different bus tours with some of the other folks. As I'm sure you are aware, the governor is coming back on Thursday. It's a very brief, kind of 40-minute in and out stop. He'll be meeting with the long-term recovery group and just having a roundtable about where we're at in terms of utilizing the funding we've received, what are our outstanding needs, and where we anticipate going next. With the asbestos testing, we're moving forward. The contract for the $500,000 is, I believe, in front of you today for acceptance, and we're working to continue to connect our uninsured folks with the asbestos testers, the surveyors. And then we just recently received the list of folks from Elk. ServPro has a family connection in the area, and they donated about $100,000 worth of services to the uninsured in Elk. And so we just received their list of properties that have been tested through them. So that's good. And our disaster reservists are working to incorporate that into our large database. The contract for the $175,000 from the health district is being worked up, so you should see that shortly. That also will be designated for asbestos testing and abatement, and we are going to use that for reimbursements for some of the folks who have already gone out and paid for things in terms of testing, and we'll get documentation from them and we'll reimburse through those funds. Had a good conversation about that with Auditor Dalton, and she's getting a process in place for us to be able to do that. And then the next step after we complete the testing is, of course, abatement and removal. My staff have identified 4 local contractors who are interested in contracting with the county to provide those services to our uninsured folks. We have a meeting with the state contracts office tomorrow to talk about the specific language that Department of Commerce needs to see in that agreement to make sure that we're meeting their requirements with that. I am expecting the Salvation Army contract for disaster case management back in our office today, and we'll be getting those folks out on the ground to start helping the individuals and the families coordinate their own recovery. So we're starting to pick up speed, a lot of good stuff happening. So. Okay. All right, great. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so we kind of had 2, so. Yeah. There we go. I got it all. Thank you. Because the asbestos testing, that's the grant. That's contract. Yes. That's going to be on
the $500,000, yeah, for the asbestos testing.
Yeah. Okay. So that way we can see that. And who's that with?
So we've had 2 contractors. We have Specialty Environmental and IRS Environmental. Okay. And the contracts are for $250,000 each for those. Okay. And then if we don't spend all of that, we'll get an amendment from the state and move that money toward abatement. Okay. Okay. Great. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, well now we're ahead of schedule. There you go. Any miscellaneous items?
I think we did have one on here, CAT's Operation Greenlight proclamation. We did that last year, right?
Yep.
Was it last year or 2 years ago?
It was last year.
Was it last?
Last year was the first year.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's actually national support for actually making it a national thing, not just county. So for cities and other.
Do you want to, once she's at the end of the table, explain it so that way the new commissioners know what it's about?
Yeah, oh, I forget that.
It made
I
the
forgot
courthouse
about that.
look awesome. Just
We actually have a picture on, if you can bring it. Did you get the picture I sent? Anyway, so essentially the National Association of Counties piloted last year an effort to get counties to light up their buildings, courthouses, their municipal buildings in green the week of Veterans Day to honor our veterans and welcome them all home. And it was actually so well received last year that now there's some federal legislation that they're looking at making it like a permanent thing. But we're gonna do another resolution, same as we did last year, to light up our buildings in green. Gil did a phenomenal job with the courthouse last year. It was absolutely beautiful, all green the week of Veterans Day. And the Veteran Services Building out in the valley, we also had lit up in green. We're encouraging any other county buildings to do the same. The more support we show for our vets, I think the better. But I think it's a great initiative, especially right now, to really be reminding ourselves that we have this beautiful nation that we have for a reason, and we want to thank the veterans who have served throughout the years. And that's the beauty of it too, because it honors all of those who've served, those who are serving now, those who have served in the past. So just drawing attention to that work.
And you had retired Colonel Newberry come and speak, and he had Girl Scout cookies for anyone who's
Yes,
there.
it was freezing though. It was absolutely freezing last year when we did the first lighting of the courthouse. We were out
I think it
there.
even started to snow a little.
It did.
Some flakes were coming down.
It was absolutely frigid. And Colonel Newberry was fantastic.
But
And then Commissioner French.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Kat and also my fellow commissioners for this. I mean, it's in the big scheme of things, this is a small effort for the county to be able to recognize veterans, but we're recognizing folks that have dedicated their lives and put their lives on the line for this country and stuff. So I just wanted to say thank you to Kat and her team, and would certainly encourage us to do this. Thank you.
sounds good.
And it should be on the consent agenda next week. Is that right, Gina? Or the first week in November? When are we putting it on the consent?
Proclamation. No, she's talking about the proclamation.
It's in the briefing packet. And
No,
then,
when is it gonna be on the consent
It's
agenda?
gonna be on the 28th of October.
Thank
So-
you.
So you see the big lights we have out the window here that light.
There you go.
There
Thanks,
you go.
Ron.
That's what
There
it
it
is.
is.
That is very green.
It was
Yeah.
very cool.
Put little green shields over on the.
Aha, I
You
see.
could do that.
Man, neat. Yeah.
Gil's
Yeah,
got
they
lots of
did a-
tricks up his sleeve.
Yes, they did a great job. Actually, our picture was one of the ones that ended up getting posted on the NACO's national website, because it was one of the good ones. So,
It looks really cool at night. I mean, just anywhere you can see the courthouse, it's glowing green.
Yeah.
It's cool.
yeah. Well, thank you for considering signing that resolution.
Well, and thank you for, I mean, because you were a big part of getting this done nationally. Kat's been on the NACO board for veterans, and so it was a big part of helping make it happen
Yes.
nationally. So thank you for your
Yeah, we
efforts
had a
there.
phenomenal response last year, looking for an even better one this year. We'd love to see all of the counties submitting photographs, and NACO tracks it, so we can submit our photographs to NACO and potentially have them all the way up there on the national website again as well. So looking forward to it. We're probably, for the original lighting, we're gonna have the Veterans Advisory Board come again. But Chris is planning that part out, so I'll keep you posted.
Okay, sounds good, because What day do we do the?
So the 6th to the 11th, the week leading up to Veterans Day. So I'll double check with Chris and find out what he's planning.
Okay, yeah, have him, just to give a little save the date and time.
Sure.
Potentially, if he's got it, just so you know. That would be great. Any other miscellaneous items? I know. Okay, because I think we've got a few minutes before, Commissioner French.
Yeah, so this question is actually for Commissioner Kearns. Is this time to bring up the conversation we were having this weekend, or do you want to delay that until later?
We can bring it up later.
Okay, all right, then never mind, thanks.
I think Scott needs to be here for it, so he's here.
Yeah, Scott's still not here yet, so he should be anytime. So, okay. Do we just want to take a 5-minute break? So let's do that. We'll just take a 5-minute break and be back in 5 minutes. It is 9:14, so we'll say at 9:20 we'll be back.
Enhancement record.
Okay. Okay, we're back to our regular meeting. Apologize for taking a little break. We just got a little out of sync in our schedules. So we are now back, and we've got Lieutenant Justin Elliott from the Sheriff's Office. Thank you, Lieutenant, for coming a few minutes early, and so we'll go ahead and let you talk about what your purchase.
So for the Sheriff's Office, primarily the Real-Time Crime Center, one of our purchases anticipated from the beginning of this project is the upgraded and new video management system for not only the Sheriff's Office and Real-Time Crime Center, but it can support multiple departments within the county. The software to be purchased is called Milestone. They're a company out of Portland, Oregon. And from our research and talking with people in the industry and some of our meetings down in New Orleans just a week and a half ago, talking to their competitors, otherwise, they're one of the top 2 video management systems in the nation. And they also support most of the systems we already have, including Flock Safety and also the BreatheCam software integrates with it, which their competitors do not. And prices are pretty comparable. We've been currently sharing a video management system with the city of Spokane called Airship. It has been challenged to keep up with the needs of the added cameras and the systems that we have in place. And also we identified some performance issues with that software. For example, we did some testing and found that the amount of video time was inconsistent, and there might be some evidentiary issues with our cases coming into the video management system. On top of that, Milestone uploads directly to axonsevidence.com, and it just works well with all our systems. The price point is $92,000. About $60,000 of that is upfront cost for software and hardware for servers, and the remaining is 5 years of subscription and support for up to 100 cameras. So we anticipate at some point in the future we will be adding cameras to that a la carte. Additionally, where Milestone is unique is it has a lot more settings that we can apply. Like I said, other agencies or other departments within the county, such as Public Works, roads, can use it for traffic surveys based off the cameras. And it can do a lot of data analytics that we don't have the capability of right now. So we hope that we can support a lot of our other partners in the county. IT has been very supportive. They've been on board the whole time. They've been able to vet this and how it would integrate. And additionally, there's talk that it could help supplement or replace some need for the current Ocularis system or other video management systems we have within the county. So that's a brief on the purchase.
Questions?
Does the IT division here then think that this would then eventually replace? So is this on top of other purchases, or will this replace other software that we're currently using?
This purchase would not replace any other software we're using the county as a whole right now. It just might, we might be able to test it as a better solution to a video management system across other departments as a potential. We'd be able to see it.
And you mentioned that you work with the City of Spokane Police Department with some other software. Have they looked at this, or would this be something of interest for both the sheriff and the SPD?
Yes, they've been looking at this software as well. They're remaining with their Airship platform right now. That's their prerogative. But we've opened the door to sharing one video management system. But they're currently staying with Airship. But again, they have different other systems that are going to be more compatible for us that they're not using. So, but we have periodic meetings with them on technology with Shauna, and as we start hopefully bringing Milestone on, they can see if they want to use it as well. But I don't know what their intention is.
But it won't inhibit sharing of video data from different cameras throughout the city and county to go to this system?
I don't believe it would. We're currently talking about access to city parks, libraries, et cetera, for situational awareness. Currently, we're doing everything through Airship for both city and county cameras, but again, it's not meeting our needs. So we're gonna see what maybe doesn't transfer over, but I believe we can still connect their video feeds through other means.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if it's you've heard me say this, I would hope that the goal over time would be, if we're gonna have a regional, real-time, data center, that it is truly regional with, the different police departments and the sheriff's office. So just hoping that we're moving that direction to get to technology that talks to each other. Cause I know how it goes, like each jurisdiction kind of looks at different technology and then they purchase something and then we go, wait a minute, that doesn't really work with ours. And so just hopefully we're keeping the lines of communication open about it so that it doesn't inhibit real regional crime center activities in the future.
Those lines of communications are at a better spot now than I've seen them at all. So we're regularly talking, we're collaborating. It's been really positive. And as we grow regionally, the issue of bringing in video from other VMS systems is going to be a constant for us because we're working with private companies, we're working with other agencies. Everybody has a different system.
School districts.
Yeah. So the fact that we have different systems coming in is not abnormal or a huge roadblock. It's just part of it.
I would think that this company would, if they're one of the two main vendors, it would have the capability of having lots of different inputs, right? If it's
Yes.
meant for this type of purpose.
Yes, and this one has much more ease and integration than the other one, which is one of the reasons we chose it.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to make an observation. The only regional law enforcement agency in the county is the county sheriff's office. And so it's up to the 13 cities to coordinate with the county because counties lead. And so I'm just hoping that as we have this dialogue, the cities will understand that to be part of that regional system, they need to be coordinating with the sheriff's office. I mean, at some point you come to a decision and who's going to make the decision? In this case, by statute, it's the sheriff's office.
Mr. Jordan.
So 60,000 for upfront, right? And then is the rest yearly or divided by the 5 years? Just trying to get a sense of the ongoing cost.
So we picked 100 cameras because we're getting close to that. We're not going up to 200. So it's 5 years. The rest is 5 years service on 100 cameras, service and subscription for all the integration of those cameras. So and I can explain, not every camera we access is going to integrate to the video management system. Typically, our own cameras are ones that we're either going to maintain some recordings or have direct access, but the majority of the cameras that come in will be maintained by another body of some sort. So I don't know if that answers your question.
So it's 90-something thousand total, right?
Yes.
And is that 30-something thousand additional a yearly cost or a total over the 5 years?
Total over the 5
Okay,
years.
thank you.
The only additional cost that should come in is when we add cameras to our system, which could be because of several different conditions. Decisions we make internally have access to more cameras, other agency, and then we have to adjust that as we add cameras. The additional cost about $500 per camera for 5 years.
And this is getting paid for out of our ARP dollars.
This is 100% ARP dollars for this purchase. And I forgot to mention, we demoed this system for I think 60 or 90 days, and we like the outcome of it.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in a little bit early.
Pleasure.
We don't have Wes, it says Wes, I see Larry Haskell. Prosecutor Haskell, thank you for coming today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us. We're here to give you a little bit of a rundown on a recurring MOU that we've had for some number of years with partners. It's the Victim Witness Memorandum of Understanding in County between the County Prosecutor's Office and the Partners with Families and Children. This is a real collaborative effort to work not only within our structure, but to reach out to the community. And it's geared primarily towards children and when they're victims of crime or their family members, for the collaboration for scheduling, any witness interviews, make sure they understand what their rights are under 769, we get to use their court dog, and we also get to use some of their facilities down there for interviews, and quite frankly, some of them are a little more secluded, and they feel a little more comfortable there than they do over here. It also provides kids court, so when I've actually done that, we had a case that ended up pleading out where there was a couple of victims killed in the valley, and ended up going to a plea. But while it was still in a trial posture, there was a young boy who witnessed these events, and as we got him ready, Partners was key to working with Kelly Fitzgerald, who was here at the time, worked with the children to get them comfortable in court, make sure they have something, some sort of a comfort something when they're on the stand and that sort of thing. So, but some more specifics, just so you know, and I had them write this down so I didn't misquote. But we fund half of an FTE this effort out of our Victim Witness Fund 133. The MOU, again, is a link between system advocacy and community advocacy, and provides the features. And like I said, Kelly did a lot of the work along with Eugene Cruz, and Eugene is still here, and he is the head of the Special Assault Unit, so this is primarily the unit that is going to be working with Partners, has been, and there is one change that I noted, and Chris said that he could still take care of it. So the legislature passed a gross substitute House Bill 1169, which just went into effect, I think, in July. And it will impact some of the funding, because what the legislature's done is they've eliminated the victim assessment, penalty assessment pays for a lot of what we do in the victim advocacy area. So there's going to be a little bit of hole in there, because they eliminated the penalty assessment for juveniles entirely. And if the court finds a defendant indigent at sentencing, then they must not order the fees. So there's some talk in WAPA about, there's a fund that they're going to set up. I brought a copy of it over, slide it to the lawyer in the room. But it also allows motions to be made for prior assessments, and the court will have to address those as well. So I wanted to make the board aware of that fact. This is still a great program. It's still something that we definitely want to do. But the funding, we're going to put a little change in one of the whereases to reflect 1169 in there for purposes of accuracy, since it just took effect recently. So with that, I take any questions that you may have about what it is, what it provides, and what we're trying to do for the community.
Questions?
Are you seeing any trends in the usage of the advocate service?
DV and these kinds of crimes, it's trending up. Eugene's the supervisor. Normally, the supervisors are very light on caseloads. He's starting week 3 of the trial right now, and that's one of the reasons I would have actually asked him to come over here, because if he wanted to get really deep, he'd be the guy to get really, really deep with. But again, it's all spelled out in the MOU as far as it goes, with the exception of the effects that 1169 is going to have on the funding stream, based on decisions that we can't predict, because we don't know what's going to happen in court and what kind of findings the court is going to make. So, but it's very valuable to the community, and it's very valuable to the county to be involved at that level with a community agency that's providing victim services as well. Okay, if there's no further questions, and Chris will take care of that adjustment to the language. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And take us next to Justin.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Slides up. We're bringing forward a request to review our school to work contract Disabilities Division. So the School to Work program, just a little background on that, provides employment support and transitional services to youth that have developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities transitioning from a school-based setting, either high school or college, primarily high school, and going into the community to develop work skills and get a job so they can be productive members and engage and be included in the community. So next slide. What we found in the last year, because the board approved this contract with Ability Employment, Goodwill Employment, and Skillskin back in January, but the need has increased throughout the year. We're looking going back to pre-pandemic levels for the need. And so because of that increased need, we anticipated including this in our contract as we look to amend for the January 1st, but it happened quicker than we anticipated. So we are putting before the board a request to amend the contracts to increase their funding to assist those individuals, because at the current level, we'll be expending the funds prior to the end of the year, which means students at a critical point transitioning from school and working on this midpoint of their year won't receive the services they have been. We have the funds available, just as something we're going to be looking at doing in January. Again, really looking back to what we had done pre-pandemic levels. So amending it now, and then we'll be briefing you again in November on the coming January contracts at that level that we'll be increasing or amending contracts to reflect what improves. Next slide. So they ask is, simple one, can we board's approval to move forward with amending the contracts to increase funding for each of those agencies by $30,000 to support services from now until the end of the year, until we amend the contracts or update the contracts in January 1 to reflect that increase moving forward for the next year.
So I'm just going to clarify. So we're going from, it was currently at 60,000 for each of those three agencies, increasing another 30,000 for each of them to a total of 90,000.
That's correct, yes.
And then next, in January, you'd be coming back for 90,000 for each of those three.
Yes, that's correct.
So I would just say at this point, if we approve this, going forward, I don't think you need to come back and let us know again in 2 months. That contract, it's like, because so much of what you do are renewal of contracts.
Yes.
I would consider this part of that briefing, but that's just me, so saving you another trip to.
But we like to have Justin come.
We do, there's
Yes.
always lots of other things that he gets to come and talk to us on. But no, I mean, it's an important thing, and you're working with the schools. I mean, as schools know that kids can be there till the age of 21, and they're trying to figure out how to help them transition. So I mean, I see these as great programs to help to do that, so.
That's great.
Justin, can you remind the commissioners where the funds come from to support this program?
Yes, so the increase will come from our local millage dollars that we have available.
The mental health?
No, millage dollars.
Village, okay.
And
Which
so,
comes through the state.
some funding comes through the state, but that's actually local dollars assessed as part of it.
It's like a property, it's through the property tax, the millage.
Yeah.
So,
Property tax village.
And this is specifically designated for developmental disabilities. Yeah. It's another tax to support that. Yeah,
and
so
it has
there's-
to be specifically, I mean, those dollars are specific for different functions.
Yes, and in this case, developmental disabilities and intellectual disability support, community inclusion, and employment support. Yeah. And the briefing that we'll be doing in November is a kind of a catch-all for the January contracts across our department. So,
Okay.
I mean, we'll briefly go over it, but I appreciate that.
Just trying to help.
I know supporting the board and ensuring that we are giving information, but also not taking up too much time is always the balance. All right, I've seen head nods from everyone. We can proceed.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was easy. Have a wonderful day.
too. Village.
Good morning.
Good morning, George.
So this briefing is for our acceptance of our
annual allocation of funding through the Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Community Development Block Grant Program, Home Investment Partnerships, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. The total award between these three programs is just over $2.7 million.
Let me get to that section here, sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
The thing with the computers and not having all everything kind of us, it's like, okay, let's go.
So the agreement should look the same as we see year over year from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The exception being the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, that being new this program year. The total amount of funds changes from year to year, but it stays pretty consistent.
Do you have a summary sheet? Am I just not seeing it? It shows.
Right on the briefing, agenda sheet, it shows what the dollars are that are coming in. For CDBG, home, ESG. The place I could have looked for previously when Justin told me what the funding was. What's that? What page? 149. Yep. Commissioner, can I ask a question?
Yes.
George, for comparing last year's to this year's, I know ESG is new. What were the dollar differences or similarities between CDBG and home?
Almost spot on. Okay. Maybe a variance of 2 to 3%, but otherwise pretty consistent.
Is this just an acceptance? Okay. Can you remind me what the ESG funding is, where it comes from and what it's for?
Yeah, so Emergency Solutions Grant Program is specifically set aside for homeless services. The primary uses for that are rapid rehousing and homeless prevention. You can use a portion of it towards emergency sheltering, but they do have caps on how much can go towards that activity. The total amount is $146,000, so it's not it's great to have additional resources, but it's
every
not
dollar.
it's not significant enough to make a dramatic impact in our.
So it's new this year.
New this year.
That's all federal.
New to the county this year.
All federal dollars.
Federal dollars. Yeah, the county just this year effectively the population reached a threshold that allowed us to receive it. So so the city of Spokane has received ESG for a really long time, and this is the first year for the county.
So the valley and no other small towns get it. It's the city and now the county.
Yeah.
And so as the county gets it, it's for everyone.
Right. Outside the city.
And the city's allocation was generally between $260,000 to $280,000.
These all flow from HUD. HUD dollars.
And these are just additional funds because there's normally ESG funds that come in during the year as well, isn't there?
ESG?
Yeah.
No, this is.
This is it.
It's kind of a strange little pot of money. I mean, because most of the HUD money for homeless services comes through the COC bucket.
Yeah.
This is like kind of this little, I remember at the city, sometimes we're like, okay, what do we do with this? But mostly it ends up getting aligned with other funding, I would assume. That's-
And there's a match requirement as
Right.
well,
They
so
have
we
to
need
come-
some of our local funds to meet that match requirement.
And I may be confusing it because I think we got CARES ESG money during
Oh.
COVID that came into the county and we
They push it
moved
through
it
that.
to the city since they were providing the services. So I think that's, if I remember right, we got that. I don't know if you were here then. Because then that's how they helped remodel the library at the time to make it a temporary shelter, and all of that was with the, emergency sheltering dollars during COVID. So, okay. Any questions?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So we've already done our homework leading to this point. So the annual action plan, the distribution of funds, identifying subrecipients for this. So this is just a matter of signing these agreements and sending back to HUD so we can have access to the line of credit.
They kind of, this one's for the committee too, right? No, these don't go from the committee.
The Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee. Yes and no. Yes, in that we've already briefed them through the annual action plan, but not these certificates. They're effectively the same thing. This is just the formal signature of the governing body.
Thank you. Okay. George, take us to Kyle. There's Kyle.
A little ahead of schedule.
We are.
Team is still on its way.
Okay. And sing for us or tap dance or
All
something,
right.
right?
I will give you one other update. I'll be providing an actual briefing next week on it, but we were selected to be awarded the integrated planning grant from the Department of Ecology with regards to our operations building project. So I'll have a formal briefing for you next week and then a resolution the following week. We were just notified on that. So that's a $200,000 grant that is no match, always the best. And then part of that will also lead us into, because that funds a lot of the characterization of the soils and the contamination that's present on site, that'll also lead us into likely submitting for additional cleanup funds from ecology. So very happy to have that on that notice. We just got that this week. So another item just for your awareness, and again, I can touch on this more next week, is we are getting some preliminary numbers from our design build contractor. Even though we're currently in that early design phase, we have been managing that site for some time now, and some of those condemned buildings are really becoming a nuisance, and kind of tired of dealing with the cleanup and the activity up there. So we're looking at taking the first couple of buildings down. They have asbestos contamination and they are not structurally sound to be rehabbed or anything. So the first two we're looking at are basically the northwest corner and the southwest corner. So those are that one right across from the 7-Eleven right there, right at the Mission Maple intersection. And then the other dilapidated building that's kind of right, where the street has to climb up the hill right by SDA right there on Cedar itself. That's the other one we're looking to accelerate the removal of. There's two other buildings that'll come down next spring when we do the project itself, but I don't see any good reason not to accelerate that. So unless the board has any concerns with retaining those buildings.
No concern for me.
Chris has been getting a lot of chatter about it. And then just a quick reminder that October 24th is the Winter Ops press briefing that we'll be having there at that Wilbur Ball property.
So, sorry, does the $200,000 planning grant, sorry, you were talking about that and then you were talking about taking down the buildings. Are those connected or those are not connected?
No, not really.
You can take those down without doing some of that planning work? Because
and really that it says it's a planning grant, but a lot of it can go to contaminant characterization and a lot of the investigation and geotech work. So
would you have to do that anyway to carefully deconstruct those buildings? So you have to do some of that.
This is more on the soil end. We've already done asbestos
so we already
characterization
know
of those
that.
buildings. We did those earlier.
Got it. So you know what you have to do there. Fun stuff.
Yep, exactly.
What's good news about the grant?
Rob, there's another chair. Maybe Kyle, if you move over one.
These two run the show here.
Actually,
brains in the office.
Oh, seriously.
Legos. Surround yourself with people smarter than you. It's great. Rob Lindsay and Amy Sumner here for you this morning to talk about our geological survey.
Yeah, so, kind of a low-hanging fruit today. Amy's going to talk a little bit about why we collect our stream flow measurements, why it's important, and our ongoing contract with the USGS to do that.
So we did have a presentation, but we have 2 stream gauges that we collect, that we pay USGS to collect data from. One is at the Green Street gauge, which is just downstream. Oh, it's up. And then the other one is the Little Spokane near Dartford. So this is a 2-year contract that we're looking at, and each gauge has a little bit of a different cost to it. The Green Street gauge, we pay the cost 100%, but USGS commits staff time to operate the gauge. That includes collecting some information to ensure that what the gauge is measuring is actually comparable to field measurements, as well as uploading data to the website and maintaining the website. Because we are partners with these 2 gauges, our logo shows up on the website, and it indicates that we are a financial partner. The Little Spokane gauge, we pay part of the amount for the gauge operation, and then USGS contributes some money to that, as well as the staff time to manage it. So the numbers are up there, and again, this is for, the total amounts are for 2 years. On the next slide, you can see where these gauges are located. So the Green Street gauge is just downstream of our wastewater treatment plant, and it allows us to get flow information coming past the plant so that we can look at various like pollutant loadings, as well as, just what's going on with the groundwater. So it's very helpful for our NPDES permit that we have with ecology. And then the Little Spokane gauge is downstream of the gauge that ecology uses to regulate YRA 55, or the Little Spokane watershed. But between those 2 gauges, if you look at the flows, you get some information about how the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer is interacting with the Little Spokane. So that's really important for us, because there are a lot of interconnections between the 2, and that can affect flows in both the stream as well as in the groundwater levels, as well as interactions with pollutants going back and forth into the river, as well as into the groundwater. And just an idea of what we get from the USGS, there's a couple years of hydrologic data from the gauge. You can download this on their website. It's pretty easy. That gold color is sort of the average over 8 years for the Green Street gauge. I believe that's the Green Street gauge. And then the blue is what was actually measured. So you can kind of see that for the most part, we had some average years. Some years it was a little slow to pick up to the peaks, but it looks pretty good. And then on the next slide, it shows a graph for the Little Spokane, and you can kind of see why we get that regulatory status for the Little Spokane. The summers are pretty low from the average. So it just helps us get that information and see long-term trends.
One of the things that I'll add to what Amy was saying is that the cost is relatively high, and something that caught my attention years ago. The USGS does all the work. They collect the data, they review the data, they take this work very seriously, and they do the water, they do the flow monitoring for streams nationwide. And there's quite a bit that goes into collecting these flow measurements, including looking at the bathymetry, the shape of the river channel itself, where the gauge is. Another significant gauge is just downstream from Monroe Street Bridge. There's a you can see there's like a man car that can go across the river, and then they can go, and periodically they'll go and resurvey the bottom of the river so they can get a sense of what that cross-sectional area is. So the USGS spends a significant amount of time recalibrating these gauges and collecting this information. So that's why we see, you know, these costs on the order.
And a couple years back, can't remember if it was this gauge for the Little Spokane, but someone had taken a car into one of the gauges, so a gauge had to get completely replaced. So sometimes things happen as well.
Wasn't a Lime scooter, it was a car.
No, it was a car.
That was at Wandermere, yeah, by Wandermere Golf Course. So we've been working with the USGS since, well, gosh, before I arrived here. So our first contract, I think, was right before Y2K. And it's part of our water quality management program. It's funded, at least the gauge on the Little Spokane is funded with Aquifer Protection Area funds. That's again, more about, you know, looking at the impact of our use of water on recharging our streams. The gauge at Green Street primarily pay out of our wastewater treatment funds, because it really is, we're looking at that more from a water quality standpoint and how our plant impacts the river in that area. Yeah.
That Green Street gauge, aren't there SCC students that get involved in, like?
We did in the beginning, but you know,
did some testing and such?
Yeah, you know, we did it, we worked with David, you know, to provide educational opportunity for the students. When it really gets down to getting the real measurements, something that somebody's going to stand by, we need to have the USGS do it.
Sure.
But you know, we're always looking for ways to coordinate with
different
students,
different university programs and such. Yeah,
and they did help us get it going in the beginning. So you are correct about that.
Did you reference Y2K?
I did. As easy as saying the year 2000. I'm just betraying my age.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No.
So this is the data posted on the USGS website on a regular basis. Cool. Good.
Yeah, we download it and then use it for our information.
We really do value our relationship with the USGS. They're the cream of the crop when it comes to hydrogeological investigations. We've worked with them on our watershed planning work up in the Little Spokane and in other areas. Appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then Matt and I are going to talk a little bit about our 6-year plans. Always updating annually here. So Ron's got a presentation for you all, and we will walk you through it. This is one thing we've done new this year is combined all of our 6-year plans. That's how you get that lovely title on the front of that slide there, but making sure we're clear on what is included in this. So instead of having separate documents for transportation, for wastewater, stormwater, we've lumped it all together so it's a little bit easier to see it in one place. So technically this is the 2024 to 2029 6-year, and which also means that 2024 is representative of what our anticipated annual construction program is for next year. And we'll walk you through some of the transportation program, stormwater, utility, and vehicle acquisition.
Well, good morning. Thanks for the time to talk about our 6-year plan. It is a requirement in state law, but also happy to kind of showcase a little bit of what we have going on. And we'll obviously focus on next year. So you can see here, this is just kind of a graphic they prepared for us, kind of showing the years out ahead of us and how many projects and what the dollar value of those projects is currently projected to be for 24 through 29. We commonly refer to 27 through 29 as out years. And really what that means is we don't know. You know, we have really solid funding for next year. All that's nailed down. The year after, we have some of that funding put together, and then the out years are ones that we're going after money for actively. So just kind of a little background. I think most of you are familiar with that. You can see the number of projects varies from 18 to 13. 13 just means we probably haven't fleshed out 2029 yet. And I'm sure by the time we get there, it'll have around 20 projects like any typical year would for us. And then the dollar values, you can see those range a little bit. 47 is a pretty big year. I think that's because we have Harvard and a couple of pretty good sized bridges in that year that are pretty nailed down. The funding has been acquired for those, so it made it a little bigger year for us. Next slide. This is a summary of our major projects. Off to the left, you can see the one I always like to harp on, because this is really a representation of how good our grant staff is doing at procuring grants and leveraging county dollars. And you can see for every dollar of county money, we're getting $4.25 of state and federal money, which is huge. They're really doing a great job. We've been able to acquire additional funding authorization for projects we had going this year, which was huge. That the more we can minimize those county dollars, we roll that essentially back into preservation work with our own maintenance crews, and we can get so much more work done with our own crews than if we have to contract out. So really great. On the right side, you see our major projects. It'll be the second year of Bigelow Gulch Project 2. Hopefully get substantial completion by the end of 2024 is the current projected schedule. We will be online. We were offline this year, which means we weren't impacting the public, which is great. We were happy to do that, unless you're of inconvenience to the traveling public. But next year, we will be very much in the middle of it. So that'll be a busy year. We have a good contractor. They're progressing well with the project, so we're happy about that. The next one, you can see the 57th and Freya roundabout. We did the preservation work on Freya this year. That went well, and it's all completed and wrapped up. And the roundabout, we looked at combining them, and they just, oddly enough, didn't combine well. This project's in the middle where that preservation work happened, but roundabouts are their own thing. How that we complete them and try and keep traffic going is very intricate and complicated and schedule dependent. So it didn't make sense to combine them. We could have stalled the preservation potentially and combined them, but it didn't work out to be advantageous to the traveling public on that particular project.
We also had different color money on those two projects as well, which would have
it would have
lumped all the
federalized
requirements, federalized the preservation one,
which is ugly. So anyway, for a couple of pretty good reasons, they won't be together. But we excited to get that roundabout done. There's a pretty good accident history at Freya and 57th that we're going to be addressing with the roundabout. And these are typically paid for by safety money, and we tend to get about one a year. That's what we have programmed, and that's what we've been getting grants for. And they're really great. They're 100% funding usually, and that's just really nice to be able to fix a problem intersection. And it's almost always safety-driven injury, property, and God forbid, fatalities. So happy to have that project. The next one, Hatch Road. And this is midway to milepost 1.1, essentially the southern portion of Hatch Road. And we have a grant for that. And you can see there, it's about a $2 million project, and we anticipate getting that done next year. And that's very much needed. I know Commissioner Kearns and Ron get calls on that pretty frequently, and it's in really tough shape if you've driven it. So happy to be getting that one done. We are pursuing money for the north half. So hopefully that will come together sooner than later, and we'll get the north half done too. Brooks Road, we did one project on Brooks Road this year, and that's all wrapped up and turned out really well. And this is the other portion. So essentially it will complete from Highway 2 down to Medical Lake, and that'll be a nice new road project for us. Preservation dollars in that one too. And it'll widen out the shoulders too. If you'd ever driven it, it didn't have much in the way of shoulders. And the shoulders, it's a nice offer for multimodal people walking or biking, at least have a shoulder to be on, and any vehicles that can't go at least have a place to get off the road for us. So that'll be good. Greta to Whitworth. This is a bike route project, and if you've seen it, it's kind of offline from Wall to the east a little. And this project we just awarded, it should be done next year too. Interestingly, we had some constituents asking for it. It was nice to be able to offer back that we have a project that we've awarded that's moving forward, so that'll be good. There's a lot of need for people wanting to get up to Whitworth in particular to have a bikeable option that's safe. Wall is very busy.
Can I ask, does that result in any reduced car lanes? I know the email we got was suggesting a road diet through there.
You know, we've looked at that a couple times because, you know, we reduced down to 1 lane each direction at a point going north on Wall, and we've looked at pulling that back possibly to Whitworth. We're looking at some options for that Whitworth intersection where it lies, and that may play into how far down we pull that 2 lane section. But I just talked to our traffic engineer yesterday, and they're going to revisit it again and see if that makes sense. And that will likely be another one that we might apply for safety money on, an intersection improvement like that, and that may dictate where we go to 2 lanes. Because we'd essentially just restripe it from that point north.
Yeah. But this project in itself doesn't.
Okay. No, this does not. All right. Last one, Little Spokane Drive Bridge. This replaces one of the bridges over the Little Spokane. This is number 3704, which doesn't mean much to any of us, but very near Woolard Road. And we have the right of way for that complete, and we've got construction funding, I think, authorized on that one too. So that will be going out to bid sooner than later.
So where is that one?
You know where Woolard Road comes down and ties in? It's or maybe it's Colbert. I'd have to look, honestly. It's one of those ones of the major east-west connections where it drops down from Highway 2 and comes down to the river. And I believe
Colbert.
This is the Woolard one.
It's up north.
It's Colbert Road.
It's Colbert.
Okay, Colbert?
Yeah,
We'll
which
go with
means I have
Colbert.
to take a different way to work for.
We did get the other one awarded too recently. We got 2 bridge awards out of this cycle, and one of them's the other Little Spokane Road, Woolard, and then Gordon on Deep Creek Road. So that was a good year for us. We usually get 1 big bridge, and this year we got 2, so that helps us program out our work. Next slide. Moving on to stormwater. You can see here we have
Commissioner French has his hand raised.
Commissioner French?
Yeah, Matt, so on your list of projects, I did not see the Four Lakes project, and we already have 3 million for that project. That's more than some of the other projects already on that list. Were you going to address that later, or what's your thoughts there?
Well, I think you know, Commissioner French, we are absolutely moving forward with that. It's in the planning stages, and we'll be working through that access revision report. And there'll be a lot of work going on. It's going to be primarily consultant work, but yeah, absolutely, that one is moving forward.
There just won't be construction in 2024.
Thank you.
So on the stormwater front, you can see 2024 is a bigger year than the other years. That's really the West Terrace project on top of the other normal stormwater projects. The rest of these dollar values represent, they focus on problem areas, and they do projects, and they try and team with maintenance wherever they can just to be more cost effective. But it's a lot of smaller projects, and they do a really good job. They manage those contracts and they get them out timely, and we fix a lot of problems that we wouldn't be able to fix in the stormwater world any other way. So those are good. And next slide.
Here you can see the projected capital spend for our wastewater program here. Part of this you'll notice too is the contribution towards the city's wastewater treatment plant, the Riverside Park Water Reclamation Facility. We continue to pay in a proportional share to the improvements at that facility to reserve what we have 10 million gallons a day of potential growth that we are continuing to maintain so that we can utilize that. That is very good bang for our buck when it comes to the growth of our county sewer flows. That we already have that available to us as opposed to the next expansion at our own treatment facility, which would be a pretty astronomical cost. So if we go to the next slide, we have some of those projects broken down over the next few years. So Donwood and Grace are one of the last areas, there's just a handful of areas left in the valley that have not been sewered, where we still have septic tank elimination projects going. These are always done in partnership with the city of Spokane Valley, so we're working with them, finishing up the design in '24, and then that'll be a 2-year project with Grace and then Donwood. And if you look at those on our map, they're right on the valley floor, not that far from the river. Really great projects to finish up, and you know, I always hate to say when you're done removing septic tanks, there always seems to be something hanging out there, but these are the last kind of blocks that we really need to get sewer in down in the valley floor there.
So is that, so I would suggest next time to come with a map of where these areas are, because it's hard to visualize for all of us, and especially understand which districts, so we know as people are calling, where they're at. You know, so usually I think we've had those in the past, so we, especially with trying to combine it like this, it's making it hard to visualize all of that. Because like for this one, you know, even on the stormwater, it's like, you know, you're doing it as a lump sum, but by district, it'd be nice to see on a map where those different projects might be. Just again, so we as commissioners, we're getting the citizens that talk to us, or when we're out and about, we know where they're at, as we talk to different citizens. But on this one, is this then off Barker where we were already doing some of that, or I don't know.
Those are a little different. It is in the valley floor, but the Barker main extension is a little bit different than the Donwood and Grace. I'll get you maps here. I have those almost worked up, so I'll have those. I'll just follow up with those as well and show those to you.
Okay, because when you say the valley floor, I mean that's a
Very
big
large.
area, so
Yeah.
that doesn't do me any good.
Valley
I know.
floor. So
So-
can I follow up on that? So I was just gonna ask if these were all available on our website, you know, for the community to look at as well, and the maps would help, I think, the community members too, just to kind of zoom in, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm still gonna ask, so Donwood and Grace, I kind of know where Grace is, I don't know where Donwood is, so I still don't know the general area.
Okay, I'll grab that for you.
It's South Barker.
Yeah.
South Barker on the west side, kind of, you know where Bud Morrison's development is, it's across Barker from that in essence. It's about that far south.
Okay, great, thank you. That just gives me the general
Yeah.
area.
And then we're getting prepared to add some sewering up in some of the more developed areas in what's called our Lanyard area. So that's up in that Mount Spokane area there which is part of our added sewering area. And then that key undercrossing, which will unlock that area, is to get across Highway 2. That was one of the projects that was funded by ARPA funds, and we're expected to be building that in '25. That's where we need to bore underneath Highway 2 with a large casing so that we can extend our sewer trunk to the other side of the highway, and then we can begin to start ticking away some of those projects.
Your nearest landmark there is your north side, North 40. Okay.
We talked a little bit about our share of the improvements at the city's facility there. So we estimate about $1 million a year for that. And sometimes those projects come and go, but we do have their capital plan that we try to line up so that our budgeting is pretty accurate there. And then, as we mentioned before, we have McKinstry doing our study at the treatment plant, and that is looking at potential energy-related projects. So that would be renewable natural gas, solar, and low-head hydro. We don't have that report back yet. We're waiting on that investment grade audit, but we are planning that if those do come back and show that they will pay for themselves, that we would have, we're budgeting in for those projects to be done in 2025, should they all come back and pencil, which we'll always be reporting back to you. Next slide, Ron.
So this is our purchase list for equipment for Fund 501. That's the revolving fund that does most of the equipment for Spokane County and light cars and trucks, at least from the public works and scraps and juvenile, the three. So you can see here, it's kind of a typical year. We have been leasing graders. It just made far more sense. They had given us a really cheap lease rate on cat graders. So we had a number of years where we were doing that exclusively, with the thought at some point they have a really good purchase price at the end of those leases, and we'd like to convert some portion of our grader fleet over to ownership just to reduce our exposure to lease rate increases. You can see here the lease rates have gone up. They went from 22 to 40. So we're looking at that again. I looked at it years ago and the breakover point was 25. As you know, everything's gone up, so I'm sure it's not 25 anymore. But we'll look at where it makes sense to own versus lease. They're just a huge capital outlay for us, so buying a bunch at one time isn't super feasible. But if we do 2 or 3 a year, that might be in our best interest just to protect ourselves. And then we can play with service life on how long we keep them. It is more maintenance intensive, obviously, which means more capacity at our central shop that works on heavy equipment, more mechanics, which are tough to get, and just exposure to breakdowns that we don't have as part of the lease. So we'll continue to look at that. For now, we're going to continue with leases. You can see on top there's a proposal to purchase 3 from the third-year lease group, and that would be our proposal. And you can see we're getting a low boy, which is just the trailer. It's not the actual tractor that pulls the trailer. Our old one is just at the end of its life, and then a service truck, and then some light duty vehicles, and then upfitting, which is really just putting the boxes and the customization of some of the light trucks to better accommodate our crew's needs. And that's our purchase plan. This is scaled back from previous years. Life's gotten pretty expensive. I'll continue to lobby the board, had every opportunity for additional maintenance and preservation funds. Everything we buy has gone through the roof, period. We have to pay more in wages, which is important to keep good people. The materials have all gone up, the equipment's all gone up. And we want to keep doing a good job, and that all affects level of service, our ability to fund. We did stop preservation early this year for funding reasons, so something we need to look at. But this equipment list, I think, is reasonable. It continues to improve our light equipment fleet, which is important. It had gotten quite long in the tooth. A lot of our trucks were 10, 15, 20 years old with 200,000-300,000 miles on them, which obviously doesn't work real well. It gets in the way of being operational. So I think it's a good proposal. Happy to answer any questions about that.
What's a service truck?
That's the actual one the mechanics run around in. They're bigger trucks. They're usually more than a 1-ton. They're usually 550s or bigger. Okay. And they have a service body with a crane, so they can also help with putting wings on graders in the wintertime, pulling an engine in the field. They have a lot more. They basically allow them to do a lot of what they would do in the shop out in the field.
Okay.
We've always had 2 or 3 of them.
But when I saw the price there, I was like, this better not be like an F-250 or 350 for that price.
No, they are substantial trucks.
Okay. And then as far as the graders, are those still coming with equipped with the boots?
Yeah.
And do you know how much of our fleet is equipped with no, we were leasing some, but then we actually were making them in-house, right?
Yep, our crews build them.
That's right.
We upfit them in-house.
Yeah, so do you know right offhand how many, or what percentage of our grader fleet is equipped with a boot?
I could be talking out of turn here, but I believe we had all of our graders fitted for boots last I checked. And as we rotate through and some lease graders go back, we're getting the same graders. So I'm sure there might be slight modifications, but the boots we keep when we turn the graders back and then put them on the new graders that we get on the lease. That's great. So
Thank you.
They should all have boots, would be the short answer.
Great.
Any other questions? George?
Apps would be great. That would help me too. So this is your plan for next year on the 6-year plan, right? For the transportation improvement, it's subject to change, right?
The transportation?
Yeah. Just help me understand where this presentation fits kind of in the cycle of projects that are upcoming.
So we're statutorily required to have both, which is in essence a 6-year plan and an annual construction program. So these are the projects that we are in essence, authorized to work on next year. We come in also a statutory requirement, usually towards the end of summer. And so just if you recall, 2 months ago, and we do an amended annual construction program, which just trues up for what actually happened to what we expected to happen. So that might mean, and that even includes some of the dollar figures. So, this project's going to carry over to next year. So that means it's going to be, we're going to spend less this year and some of it into next year if a project winters over. And then if we need to add a project, which is rare because we don't typically have the capacity to add a capital project in a mid-year in the time it takes to get it designed and procured out. So this is pretty representative of what we're going to be doing next year.
Okay, and then you do the procurement next, or how long does it take to kind of get all the contracts in place typically?
It depends on whether or not we were designing it in-house or we're using outside consultants to design a project. So we'll already be working through the design phase on various projects at a given time, using either an on-call consultant, or if it's a very large project, we'll actually have to do a specific solicitation to bring that consultant on board. And then once we have a completed set of construction documents, then we have a resolution so that we can advertise the project. They advertise for typically 3 weeks, and then we come back with our low bid award, and then get on the ground. It's usually about 8 weeks from when we go out, I'd say maybe 9, to when we're boots on the ground.
And the one other wild card for us is if we're doing a preservation project, just working within the curves, I'll call it, and doing a grind and inlay or a rebuild, that they call those preservation projects, and they don't require right-of-way or much in the way of environmental permitting. Those move much quicker. Oftentimes, if we get preservation money, they want it spent in a year or two because you don't have those bigger challenges. On any of the larger capital projects, usually even bridges, will have right-of-way requirements, and right there you're adding a year, year and a half guarantee. There isn't a quicker way to short circuit that process. So any of those ones further down the path, like Harvard being an example, we have all of our funding secured, but it has a whole bunch of right-of-way, like 80 parcels that we have to get little slivers off of, and you can just imagine those negotiations all take time.
And then the future proposed number of projects per year, that's kind of the future plan, right? But it's all contingent on securing funding and those types of things. Okay. I just want to note that you said we don't have 2029 all planned out yet, but I haven't planned what I'm having for lunch today.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Well, leftover Indian food.
I had that for dinner yesterday. So.
Madam Chair, so what are the next steps then in the process? You're presenting this, you're gonna have it all up on the website for the public to review. When is it up for hearing, or what are the next steps?
Yeah, we'll advertise it for public hearing, and then it'll come back before the board for adoption, recommendation to adopt. So it's probably 2 to 3 weeks out at least.
Okay.
Depends on board's meetings.
You'll let us know when you have stuff up on the website.
Yeah,
The more detailed plans.
Yeah, we'll have this up right away, the actual plan that has all the detail on
Right.
it, and we'll add maps to it.
Perfect.
And we always have those maps, they just weren't quite ready yet. You're right to want them there. Everybody finds that more digestible than a list, right? It's just way easier, so
Yes.
we certainly will get those up.
Is the hearing still scheduled for the 26th this month?
I don't have the date in front of me, that sounds right.
Sounds about right. Running low on meetings.
Yeah, as we get to the end of the year, it's interesting how it gets. So,
Race, to get everything in.
yes. So,
But, as we kind of mentioned in level up, I mean, if you recall from our presentation last year, I think we were only running about $3.30 in match for every dollar. We're up at $4.25, looking at the 24 program, which is outstanding. A 4 to 1 is really high. I mean, I think we had years at the city, we were only 2.5 to 1. So getting north of 3 and even 4 is really impressive. Our funding teams are doing just a heck of a job and getting grant dollars and keeping that $6.5 million of county funds and turning that into almost $30 million on the ground is really something special.
I think in last year's presentation, you did have that number in there, and I think it is good to have that, if you can put that in, and showing the increase, from prior year, because it is awesome what you guys are doing to make sure that we've got the additional funds to do, because as we all know, I mean, roads are one of the biggest items that people talk to us about, so. And truly, I think we'll see it in the presentation from the crowd board when they come, that, it was really one of the things counties were founded for, was to be able for public safety and for roads.
And the team's gonna be back, I think the last Monday in October to present on budget. It was the first Monday in, anyhow, they'll be back.
Randy.
They'll be back again to present more of a deeper dive into the budget for 2024. A lot of what Matt's highlighting is going to be covered in there. Because of the increasing costs, it's taking strain on our ability to continue to fund the maintenance and preservation, all the way from paving to gravel roads to snow plowing. So it will be an opportunity to really help the board deep dive into it. Randy just confirmed it's on 10:30. Deep dive into the budget so that we can help understand kind of, as our costs are increasing with our equipment, with our materials and our supplies and whatnot, and if we have a limited set of funding, choices have to be made, and where do we want to make those shifts and choices at. So we'll have a chance to go deeper into the financials at that time.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Morning, Scott.
Commissioners, good morning. Thank you. A couple of things. We're certainly here to talk about comprehensive plan amendments for 2024 that we talked about briefly a few weeks ago. But to tie into what Kyle and Matt were talking about, as you know, we've been working to fix a flawed capital facilities plan from several years past. And with Scott's help, Kyle, notably, a lot of the departments have come together to make that plan really possible, and you'll see that in the comp plan amendments as they come before you later this year. What we've also learned, though, is that we have to coordinate that on an annual basis, that kind of capital facilities planning and the CIPs that the various departments do have to go through the comp plan process under GMA rules. And so the process we've started this year, we're going to have to routinize with all of the key department heads so that we're using simpler formats. We're putting them into a cycle that can come before you in that annual cycle. So it's something we didn't anticipate a couple of years ago, but it's come together in a pretty effective fashion so far. Anyway, you'll start to see things like this that not only hit the budget cycle, but they'll be part of the ongoing comprehensive planning process as well. And it's been something that the county just didn't do in the past. So regarding the comp plan amendments, it was our intention to try to keep development moving in the county, specifically for residential, to keep providing space for housing. And so the idea was to open up a comprehensive plan amendment cycle in 24 on a parallel path with us working on the 26 plan, the major update, and handling these plans over here, but limiting those to those that only provide additional residential development or additional housing. That's been the lion's share of amendments in the last few years anyway, but it does provide one more cycle, one more timely cycle to get projects that could be coming out of the ground in 25 and 26 when we're working on the bigger update. So happy to answer any thoughts or questions about that, but we've made the announcement, the press release went out after the last one. We've gotten some phone calls, we know there's interest, and we're ready to go.
How long are you leaving that open? When do we normally close then?
December 20th is the date in the county code where the amendment cycle is, that's the deadline date.
For them to submit and then it goes through the process.
Yes. And there is an opening date listed, but that's completely really really flexible. So we had in that press release, we just said from now until December 20th, we will accept. This is still a separate and distinct process from the steering committee and the urban growth area discussions. So the amendments that we would be anticipating would still be in the existing urban growth area. And we're not in a position to expand that area unilaterally at this point. So it fits into our traditional rule.
These are things we've done every year.
It is
Just this year, we're limiting to residential. In the past, it wasn't limited.
correct. And not every amendment was found to be worthy of consideration in the past by planning commissions and by this board, but this year was the first year we did narrow that scope because we were focusing on that. And now that we've staffed up our long range work, we could handle another round in 24, keeping it limited to residential.
So are you looking for guidance around language that you can use to be clear with developers what will be reviewed or what wouldn't fit into, the residential development and housing stock? So like what are you looking for today? It says guidance and direction.
If we came sort of back at your request to fill in any gaps that may have been in the commissioners' minds from reopening this cycle. Guidance and language is pretty typical. If we get, what happens oftentimes is the first phone call is, I've got a client with this piece of land that wants to do an amendment. Is it even possible? And then we can filter that down to, yeah, we're doing residential. And then how that gets packaged goes into a preliminary application that ultimately gets through a preview cycle, planning commission, and to you for then that initiation. Once they're formally initiated, then these applicants go into their full bore package, and that's where they start spending money because it's an expensive process. But no, we're pretty comfortable that we can market and handle this effectively.
So what was advertised as the parameters for what you will review or not review?
The press release was pretty broad. It simply said we're accepting comprehensive plan amendments that will increase the residential land or housing stock in the 24 cycle.
Because we had previously, Scott had come to us and was asking us not to do a comp plan amendments in 24 due to the staffing that it was going to take to go forward into the comp plan amendment, the full 2026 comp plan change. And so based on that, I mean, we had a lot of people that I had a lot of constituents say, we had property ready that was ready to go that we were going to put in for it for housing purposes, and we're frustrated. And I think, some of us were frustrated that we wouldn't be able to do more housing, additional looks at housing opportunities until 2026. And so that's why I think when we did the ARP dollars to provide the additional long-term planning, we're like, can we open that back up? Because it's our normal process. And so that was, the piece. And so then that's when Scott was like, okay, we think we can do it, but it just, if we're looking at housing, because we know that's our crisis, is trying to get more housing. So that was why he came to us before. So Commissioner French.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to compliment Scott for finding a path to be able to address what you articulated as a crisis. It is a crisis. And while we all have a lot of politicians to give lip service to how do we increase the housing inventory, it's great to see that the county is moving forward on this and finding opportunities to put more land into the housing initiative and stuff. So I just wanted to compliment Mr. Chesney for the work and the leadership he's provided with regard to the housing issue. Thank you.
So I guess I'm just making sure, since we haven't I guess I didn't think before in previous years you had like put parameters on the application, so I'm just asking, is it very clear to the development committee what the parameters are so that later on legally, you know, we're in a good space and we don't have developers applying thinking that they fit the parameters and later finding out that they don't?
I think we've been clear, and I think the development community understands precisely what we're offering.
Okay.
It's much more likely that someone that wanted to pursue non-residential land, there's quite a lot of it still, you know, there's at least available non-residential land in the existing urban growth area. Most of those applications are looking to expand the UGA to create more non-residential land, and that's off the table because of the settlement agreement until we get into the 26 plan. So this is, I have not heard of anybody that has been concerned that they can't push a plan amendment forward under these rules, because the vast majority of what we've seen in the last few years have been residentially related plan amendments, either increasing residential densities in an existing residential zone or converting, for the most part, light industrial land into residential land. So we're pretty comfortable that it's clear, but there's the simple fact is if there was any question, we'd be able to answer that up front, and I don't believe there's any legal jeopardy in that at this point.
Okay, it would be nice just to make sure we have that. Like is it clearly articulated, like on the planning website, what we're accepting and what we're not?
We put an announcement up when the press release was sent out. I'll follow up. I don't know if that's still there. There's a little bit of a news feed on the bottom of the website that we use for that purpose. So if that's rotated off, we'll put it back on and make it clear.
I appreciate you coming back to kind of add some more detail and clarify some things. I'll just say I was slightly surprised by the press release just because I thought the conclusion to the last meeting was I'll come back and put more meat on the bone or something like that. And just my own perspective on it is I totally appreciate the need for more housing. So that's an important goal. To me, it's really important that we are really, that we have legal guidance on every step we take in this process, just given the history, so that things don't get undone later. So it was just a little surprising to me not to see Ms. Pilgrim involved in that conversation, given that advice from legal had been important in some of the decisions we made earlier. So that's the missing piece for me.
She is an integral part of our team. We didn't come today just because we thought this was pretty straightforward. And we're really essentially restarting a traditional GMA approved process for how you amend your comprehensive plans. We're putting something back that we had asked to take off the table a year ago. So we're not proposing any new real rules for that. And so Jessica's been, like I said, she's a part of every decision we make because of the past, the recent past. And that she's not on. We didn't even ask her to participate. We just didn't think it was there for this. But I understand your position. Yeah. We're very much aware of it.
So just one last question. Is there any concerns with where we are with the capital facilities plan and, getting, comp plan amendments in the next year and where we will be with that process?
For next year, no.
Okay.
And I say that both optimistically and confidently. You will see a capital facilities plan amendment will be at the Planning Commission on Thursday with the packages. That will be back to you at the end of November or sometime in November. That should be the last patch we have to make to the 2017 and 2020 documents to get back into compliance through the settlement agreement. In addition, and Kyle even kind of gave you a preview of the public works side of this, the capital improvement programs that are being put together now will be rolled into that CFP after the amendment is adopted. And you will have, in addition to your budget decision on December 5th, there will be yet another CFP amendment to take into account the CIP project and align those with budget and with the comprehensive plan. That will finish out 2023, and any of these projects that come through in 24 will be handled with that year's plan and that year's analysis for capital facilities and their suitability. We're slowly getting that process coordinated where it will all come together at the right time in the right place. The planning projects, the growth projects, and the capital projects all finally back on the right table.
So, and I will just say to the last meeting and the press release that it was the department that came to us to ask us not to move forward with doing a capital amendment. There was capital to do a comp plan amendment, excuse me, in 2024 as they move forward. And so when they came back, there was 3 head nods that were requesting that they move forward with that. So it was not a formal process, but it wasn't a formal process when they came and asked us to delay and not do anything until then. It was head nods at that point in time too. So it was nothing on staff. I was part of that press release. And there's 3 people in the room that had given the head nods for them to move forward with doing that. And we did want to get it out right away so that community knew, the development community knew that they could, start to, because a lot of them had started to not even think through the process any longer, from people I had talked to. So it was important to get that as soon as possible, so that way they could start to think through the process and determine if they wanted to put applications forward. So I will take that on for me. I'm not, not for Scott, but we don't do everything on a formal vote and formal motion.
That's not my point.
And commissioners, if you do have any questions, Jessica is available.
Okay, thank you.
And right now, if you'd like her to jump on.
Do you want Jessica to jump on your question, or are you okay?
Well, it sounds like we're on the right track for the capital improvement, or the, so many plans.
I know.
The capital facilities plan to be completed by the end of the year with all the alignment, with all the 6-year plans, which really shows what the costs, will be to do different upgrades. And I look forward to seeing, is it already available, the draft capital facilities plan? Because it's going to the Plan Commission, you said this week.
They've been posted for almost 21 days.
Okay, so I'll look at that. But the idea behind that is that you've gotten all the feedback that you can from other local water districts and school districts and all of those things. So anyway, I'm looking forward to getting to that point. So.
We are too.
Thank you. Did you have any questions?
No, I'll just say that I think I'm just interested in an update on some legal advice we got in the context of not a public meeting, so I'm happy to follow up with her afterwards.
Hi, Jessica. Nice to see you. Thank you. It sounds like Commissioner Jordan will follow up with you after.
I know she's tired of hearing from me, so.
That is not true. That's just fine.
That's okay. She didn't want to hear from me the either, so.
That is a true statement given your news, but.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Scott? Okay.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, then that's going to take us to Mike Burgess. I see he's on. Here comes Jeff at first.
Hello, commissioners. I am driving, unfortunately, so I won't be able to have video on. But I think this is a follow-up on the conversation we had last week. I know Jeff has some materials for you to talk about, with the objective trying to narrow down the scope of the agenda specific to the, I think probably mostly the capital budget and the transportation projects, not costs, but excuse me, projects that had been listed. it looks like you have some material there. So I assume Jeff is there. If I can punt it to you, Jeff, now that you're in the room, that'd be great.
Perfect. So I'm just going to pass these out. I know you might have them on your computer, but I'm a paper person. The areas in yellow are things that I think we need some additional feedback on. So Burgess had added in the disaster relief fire response into number 1. So that's new language you're seeing around that. And then I think the next thing, you collectively had asked that I bring back some GSI info from last year's GSI agenda, and Commissioner French, I emailed this document to you about 10 minutes ago. So on the one pager, you'll see GSI's money request, the capital request operating. On the backside, you'll see the energy and environment statement that stemmed from the natural gas discussion. And then below that, there's some language that Commissioner Jordan has sent me as something for the group to consider. So the one side is more on the natural gas related to number 5. The other side is just GSI in general. And you'll all recognize some of the stuff that was on GSI's list was funded or partially funded last year. And as I looked at it, I thought it might jog some of your memories on stuff that you might have interest in.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair. I've given a lot of thought to, a proposal that Commissioner Jordan made when we talked about this last time about, tying the natural gas prohibition to, the cap and trade. And my initial reaction is you're replacing one bad program with another. And we were promised the gas at the pump would be 5-cent increase, and it's actually closer to 50 to 60 cent increase. And it's raising more money than originally projected because they were willing to tax anything that moved in the breeze. So I'm not exactly real comfortable with one bad program replacing another bad program. The Building Code Council, under the advice of the AG, has postponed the implementation because they did not respond to the plaintiff's original request with regard to the federal litigation. And I just can't help but think that at some point, this is going to get resolved in the courts and not in the Building Code Council or not by the state legislature, unless the state legislature comes back and says, like they've done already, that they're not going to pass legislation that prohibits natural gas. So a lot of people forget the fact that a democratically controlled legislature voted not to terminate natural gas, and yet the Building Code Council even ignored their advice. So I think if we keep our eye on the ball and make sure that we try and not eliminate a energy source for 370,000 users on Eastern Washington, that needs to be the goal, and not looking at a way to compromise on what is ultimately bad legislation. I mean, if for some reason we lose at the court level, and I don't think we will, because the Ninth District Court, which is most liberal district court, already ruled against the state of California and Berkeley. I just can't help but feel that we'll probably prevail there. If not, in the legislature, once again, in the fall, basically taking this authority away from the Building Code Council. And I have talked to a couple legislators that are going to be presenting that specific legislation. So I'm not sure that I'm comfortable compromising yet. Maybe we'll get there, but we're there. I don't think we're there yet. So I'm not okay with keeping it on the table, but I don't want to start giving up the fight before we're actually into it. So that's my comments with regard to that. Thank you.
I'll ask-
Sorry,
oh.
can I follow, is there the language that Commissioner French is talking about, is that on this
So
draft?
that would be the
or-
original number 5, I guess. It's a more condensed version of his comments.
Is this, it looks like you put it on the back of the
So on the
GSI,
back of the GSI,
other
the
suggestions.
top part, energy
Oh,
environment is from
there, I was like looking
GSI.
for, sorry.
Yeah.
It's buried.
What? Okay.
The bottom
All right, I
part
thought this
was
was
Commissioner
GSI.
Jordan's suggestion for
Okay.
consideration.
I like the original language that's marked as number 5 on the draft pledge agenda.
I like to wait till I get 3 one way or the other. Or if we don't have that yet, we can hunt for another week.
I do think it's important to state that we do want to have greater access to affordable, reliable energy sources that, and we know the Inflation Reduction Act is going to push a lot of dollars to the states as well as to individual consumers to take advantage of like rebates and to do different upgrades, right? To be, to change over to clean energy. So I just don't want to lose that there are opportunities and we do want to support more opportunities for residents and developers to access those dollars to make it, you know, more affordable. So I don't know if it fits in that section or not, but it's definitely something we want to be on the cutting edge of.
I think that's gonna be more of the education as to what the federal dollars are gonna do. It's not a legislative agenda for the state, though. And I just literally toured a friend's house who they're just building a house, and they literally have to put a heat pump in and a furnace, and that's not affordable. Because once you reach below a certain temperature, then you have to have a furnace. And they're before the natural gas standards, so I mean, so it's, I think it's a gas, I think they can do gas still at this point in time. But it's really making it not affordable for people that are low income to build a house and to get a house, as we try to, like, as we've gone to 8 homes per acre, which is a very dense, you know, housing, to try to make it more affordable for housing for low income people to buy houses. It's actually, it's gonna get less affordable. You know, because again, you know, or they're not gonna have 2 heat sources and they're gonna be cold once it gets, you know, really cold temperatures over here in Spokane County. So, I mean, I'm really concerned about, I mean, I hadn't thought about it till like I said, just seeing someone who just built a house and had to put in 2 different heat sources. That's not affordable.
I just wanted to say to Commissioner French, I appreciate you considering the language and keeping it on the table. I think that the way I wrote the proposal was Spokane County, I left the language about concerns about all the issues you're talking about, Commissioner Cooney. I'd added Spokane County requests that the legislature provide financial incentives and investments to facilitate compliance with the state's climate pollution reduction goals. So the point with that is to say, if you're gonna put some of these rules in place, help make it affordable, provide the funding to do that. Not all of the state's climate reduction goals don't all relate to natural gas, right? We have requirements. We got a presentation from Gil on where we've got to make some energy efficiency upgrades, but we don't have to go away from natural gas as the county. So I was trying to keep it somewhat broad to say, hey, let's get some financial help with these things. I think that's a good good piece to include in that statement.
Commissioner French?
You know, listening to how you articulated that, you know, if, you know, and as well as Commissioner Waldron, if you wanted to have a statement that said that we encourage the state to provide incentives for exploring or implementing additional energy conservation or energy generation opportunities, you know, that's a separate issue. And so if you separated the two, so they're not tied together with the natural gas prohibition, it'd be a lot easier for me to support that, because I do think that there, and Commissioner Cooney was dead on with regard to the additional cost, and we are on this side of the state gonna just put one more hurdle in front of people to try and get into housing. But if your statement is to have the state provide financial assistance for that conversion, you know, that's a different topic than eliminating natural gas. And so I think I can support that.
Is there support among the majority of you to have two separate bullets? Side by side, take your time.
I mean, I think so. I'm not sure, you know, I would, you know, I would agree to not tie the two together because I think it's two separate issues. Because I think, again, what's going to be coming down from the feds to the state, I mean, I can tell you, I'm looking at what some of those opportunities are, but I have the money to fund it on the front end, versus a lot of people aren't going to have the money to fund it on the front end if you try to go to an alternative source. And I'm just worried that we're not looking at how do we make this affordable for you know, a single mom who's got a couple kids to be able to buy a house. So, you know, which is part of why I think, you know, we wanted to make sure we, you know, continue to expand, you know, housing to then hopefully bring down some of those overall cost of housing and, you know, by having more inventory. And so, you know, how do we look at this to then help, you know, help make it affordable? Because we're losing people. I mean, I just talked to, you know, another friend who's building over in Post Falls because it's $40,000 cheaper to go buy a house, brand new house in Post Falls from the same company that's building in Spokane too. You know, just because of what the different structures, you know, requirements are. So I don't know, we're just in a weird situation here in Spokane County that we've got a border county that then we're driving people over to Post Falls to then come work and take up our jobs here, you know, which is clogging up our freeway, as everyone knows, driving from, you know, the West Plains, Sunset Hill, all the way to Coeur d'Alene. You know, so it's, I don't know what the answer is or what the right legislation is to request, but those are the concerns I have, that we're truly forcing people to go to Idaho to live, because it is more affordable. So I don't know. I'm just saying that out loud.
I prefer to keep them together, but I'm happy to entertain other ideas for language too.
I think, yeah, I think we probably will have to separate. I mean, I think as I started that whole tirade, that it's not tirade, just description of things, that I think it'd be better to have it be separate and look at what the opportunities are to you know, that will be coming down to see what the state could do to help on that side.
Well, I believe I've heard 3 people say make a stab at separate. Can we go to page 2? So numbers 8, 9, 10, and 11 were all things that I had in my notes that I heard somebody mention last week, but we didn't pause on them long enough to see if there was board support. So the kind of wrapped together the affordable housing / housing trust fund behavioral health connection was one that was mentioned. Pursuit bills, they were talking around the helicopter, another sheriff request, if we wanted those to be over overlapping in ours from the sheriff and the historical courthouse facility funding. So are those things that are wanted in, or?
I can say I brought up the historical courthouse facility funding. I think that's a Gil question, to talk to Gil to see what funding. I know there is funding. I don't know if you can go after it every year. I don't know what we've gone after and what we've got. It's usually a grant process. So, you know, with the new energy code standards, if that's, you know, just for us to be thinking about, or that, I mean, that could be, you know, Alan, it's almost like a greater topic for WASAC. I know they're not doing a agenda, but it could be something just to add on the ability to just keep it on the list, you know, for all counties are probably, you know, feeling the same thing. So Commissioner French.
No, you're exactly right, Madam Chair. The new code and the new energy conversion packages will provide additional costs to the county. And you know, if we're going to be required to meet these new standards, then the state ought to be helping to fund that. You know, we've been, I mean, we're one of the 2 oldest courthouses in the state. And we did receive about 5 or 6 years ago, significant grants from the Historical Society to be able to update the facility. And we went through a complete remodel of the courthouse. And despite the fact that we did that probably 5, 6 years ago, we're now having to go back and make energy conversions and stuff. So, you know, the state is creating these obstacles, and I'd just as soon have the state pay for it as opposed to our local tax dollars, taxpayer dollars and stuff. So I support you 100%, Madam Chair.
So I think we need to have a conversation with Gil to.
I'll get info from Gil, send it around to the group, bring it back next week. Anybody else want to speak to 8, 9, or 10?
I think I was the one that threw out 8, and I'd be happy to do a little more research to find out what specific asks are going on around homeless response and affordable housing. Like if there's a specific need to put more money into the housing trust fund or something like that that would benefit developers here. So I'll do a little research if that's okay, and bring back a suggestion. Talk to George.
Just missed him.
I know. No, I'll talk to George and a couple of the other housing leaders, you know, in the community, just find out if there's a key provision that needs to be addressed to break down some barriers to affordable housing.
9 or 10?
I would think with the helicopter, because that, I mean, it tends to be such a regional asset, helping the neighboring communities, neighboring counties. I mean, I would certainly think we would at least make the ask for some state funds to help offset the cost of the new helicopter.
Commissioner French, I see you raised your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. You know, with regard to the comments that Commissioner Waldron made with regard to affordable housing, you know, if it would, one of the things that the state could do, either with the trust fund or other legislation, is try and do something that would be more supportive of home ownership. You know, the solution that everybody has to live in an apartment either above, below, or next to your neighbor in a facility that they don't own. I mean, you know, that's perpetuating the wealth gap between those that have and those that don't have. And so single family ownership, if that could be incorporated as part of that conversation, I think that would be a good move.
Thank you, Commissioner. I agree. And I think Community Frameworks, I might reach out to them because they got some City of Spokane money to look at shared equity models for people to get into home ownership. And I just don't know where those have gone, and if those are allowed to be funded through the housing trust funds. That'd be a good question.
Anybody want to speak to pursuit bills staying on?
I think that's a question for the sheriff's office, because I'm sure through WASPIC they're looking at what they're wanting to put forward, but I can tell you, I have citizens all the time talking to me about that, but, you know, since I think it's in the news all the time, that I think it'd be worth us looking at it as a whole as well.
I can reach out to the sheriff. So is there support to continue pursuing all four of these, among at least?
He's getting additional information.
So then capital requests.
Of course. The Wasack jail cost item, are we leaving that on? I think wasn't there some studies put into the budget last year?
Yes, so they're doing the study right now.
Yeah.
So I think it's, but
I'm fine leaving it on, I was just curious.
I think we'd want to leave it on. We might talk to Wasack, just because at the LSC meeting, and I wasn't there for the whole thing, so Commissioner French, you were on the, I think Wasack is not having a legislative priority list this year, if that's correct. So we may, since it's a short session, as part of it. But again, I think it's still gonna be one of those things we wanna keep awareness to and keep it on the forefront, so.
Yeah, it's my understanding the priority list is just going to be a continuation of what we did this year in terms of the long session.
So the capital, there was, I would say, consensus last week on we should have a top priority. I don't know that I heard consensus on what said priority would be. So we have 2 through 8 or 2 through 7 are, 3 projects that have a little bit of meat to the bone, 3 projects that are just title only, to speak in legislative terms. Is there consensus on what a top priority would be?
I know for me, I have not had time to look at this since last week. A little busy with some other things, as probably this week. So I don't know, Jeff, it's gonna be better for you to kind of reach out to the commissioner and just kind of see what thoughts are. I don't know that we're gonna come to any kind of consensus today.
Still my job to throw it out there.
Yes, so no, it's good to put the reminder out there that we need to be thinking about it and put it out there, so.
I have a question maybe for Commissioner French, and we could talk about it later too, but I asked for Division Connects to be in the conversation just because when I was at the City Line celebration, there seemed to be a lot of talk about the next big project for transportation. It might be premature. I don't know what STA's plans are for that, but just wanted to throw that out there as a topic of interest.
It's number 7 on transportation.
Oh, am I jumping ahead? Oh, I'm sorry. I am getting ahead. I retract my question.
But I've got an answer, doggone it, I've got an answer. No, just by way of an update, FTA last week did approve the Division Street BRT project to move into preliminary engineering. This is a milestone because it means that every nickel we spend from now on goes on our side of the ledger with regard to matching grants for FTA. So that is moving forward. And but thanks for the interest.
So for numbers 5, 6, and 7, I don't recall who put them on. I believe that was Mike Burgess and his one-on-ones, talking with you guys before we started these group conversations. So
6 was one that I requested be on there, and that actually connects back to when Matt and Kyle were just talking about, we've done about 1 mile of Hatch Road, and he said we're looking for funding for that 2nd mile. So this is North Hatch Road that leads to Bidwell Park, our Northside Aquatic Center.
The one we put in at the federal?
Yes, yep, still the same. We have received funding to complete half of the distance, and that was from Midway Road to, I think it's Ballard Road, which I think Matt referred to today as mile marker 1.1, or is that right? Yeah, so we have that half funding. This is to get it from there to Colbert Road, which gets us to Bidwell Park, our Northside Aquatic Center. So I had been working with Representative Voles last year. At one point, it was in a draft House budget, and then a bunch of projects were swept out to fund some other stuff, and that was one that got axed right there at the end. So I think it's important we go back, because again, this is the only road that leads us to Bidwell Park, which is our Northside Aquatic Center. Oh, and there you are. We have a nice one-sheeter that Kyle and his team put together for us. So we've got price, we've got scope, we've got everything you could ever want to know about it in one sheet.
Commissioner French?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a good project, the Hatch Road Reconstruction Project, and it does serve an asset that, you know, the county owns and stuff. And so, you know, I'd certainly support it. As far as the West Plains is concerned, you know, the Four Lakes interchange, I know that their staff is coming in with some reduced numbers on that project. It'll reduce it significantly to what the whole Craig Road improvement is, but you know, keep in mind that this Four Lakes project is a project that the legislature has already agreed to fund once. And based upon our meetings with them here in August, September, they're ready to approve it again. We just need to make sure that it's on our list, part of our ask. So, but it'll be at a reduced cost from what the sheet has listed at it now.
I was actually still on capital 567 when I said 567. So if I could back you up just a little bit there. Are all three of these, and I don't know exactly what wastewater lift station it is that a West Plains lift station, Commissioner French?
Yeah, that's for the West Plains. That's to service the transload facility. That's the last piece of infrastructure to be able to start leasing ground to tenants for the transload. So that's what that project is about.
Okay, so I can grab a little bit of info with that. What are we just looking for funding for the conservation scale house? I don't have any background on that.
No, I think that's one of those that we wanted to separate out what we would, you know, a letter of support versus not on our list, because that's on their list.
Okay.
And that has separate legislators are talking to the.
So do we even want it here, or do we just write a completely separate letter of support that they can send with theirs? Do we leave it on this list as something, the other stuff on this list, primarily if it's also support, in my mind is like a lesser priority, but it's still ours, versus letter of support for someone else's thing. We can go either way. That was just my understanding.
Right. No, I think last time we talked about, you know, trying to separate out that here's other items within Spokane County that we're supporting, but it's like, we don't want to confuse our agenda. So,
So maybe a letter would maybe be the better way to go.
A letter would probably be a better way to go
So
than
move
having
that
it
to a
on our
letter
agenda.
that we can provide to the conservation district. Okay.
And that'll probably be the case for the next one. This was one that we just wanted to not get lost in the shuffle. So a little earlier this year, Ron and I were invited to meet with Alan Lesher, who's the local director for YMCA here locally, and he said they're in the process, they already have land, they've got the designs, they're in the fundraising stage for a South Side YMCA, kind of near Browns Mountain. They're kind of right on the curve at Glen Rose and 57th. So just something I wanted to kind of flag, something that if they're seeking funds, we can, you know, maybe write a letter of support as well. But honestly, I don't even know if they're to that point this ledge session to make that ask. But again, it was just something, I didn't want to get lost in the shuffle because it was something earlier this year. Ron and I were invited to see a presentation and just to bring us up to speed
They
on
should
it.
have their design and I think engineering done by the end of the year.
Cool.
He said, I talked to him last.
I think they're still in the quiet stage of their capital campaign, but it will launch soon. And it could be a really, you know, amazing project.
And it may, it may be something for the next for the 2025
Right.
session. But again, just something I didn't want to get lost in the shuffle, so.
So we'll do for
Hopefully
finance.
this time next year, we all remember I brought this up and, or at least one of us will remember, and we won't forget it.
So for number 5 and 7, are we waiting for them to ask for a letter of support?
I would think so.
I could get
But,
some,
and why we do that, I mean, that would feed into the Glen Rose corridor on the transportation side, because if
Yes.
the Y goes in there, that
We're gonna
road
need
is
some-
not,
much bigger issue.
yes.
It needs to be integrated.
Bad intersection already. And I definitely have citizens up there that talk all the time about that, so.
Well, that's another one that was axed that final weekend of the last session. It made the budget up one iteration.
So, Commissioner French, you raised your hand.
Yes, and so, that's the sewer lift station out in the West Plains, that's actually gonna be a city ask. And probably it's not a county ask, but would require a letter of support from us. I know that SIA and S3R3 are going to be providing letters of support for that ask and stuff, but you could probably move that off of our list in terms of capital and just say it's a letter of support.
Perfect, yeah, we trade letters out there frequently. So 5, 6, and 7 under capital are all gonna be moved to letters of support. I will await feedback from you and try to pester you to get feedback on if we can come to a priority order or at least a number 1. So transportation, I have details on 6 and 7. Is that the same thing? Do we need to do kind of some conversations on prioritizing?
So what do we want to do with number 5? Because 5 is on Kyle's plan that we were just presented to today about
Transportation
the
5?
Greta, transportation from Greta to Whitworth Drive. So that's,
But it's like a small part of it.
What we're doing, the project right now, is like a $400,000 signing and striping project.
okay, so this is much longer than overall. Okay. Do we need to adjust the ask, what it is then?
To me, like be a
If
smaller
we're covering a
chunk.
portion of it, I mean, would we be able to bring that $8 million number down? I think, this is just my thoughts, and tell me if you disagree. I think it's important that we have a variety of dollar amounts. So, because when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, it all
These are
depends.
large for a supplement.
Yeah, so that's what, like the North Hatch was 2.5 million. We've got everything as much as 34 million. So I think it's important we have that spread. If the money's there for a 34 million, we want it. But if there's only 2.5 million and they can only fund one item, we want to make sure we have that option available for them. So I think it's important, but so I don't know, maybe that's up to you to determine if anything in number 5 needs adjusted based on what we're doing.
I'll take a look at it with our team there. If we're gonna rebuild Wall Street, that's the kind of number we're talking about.
Okay.
But I'll definitely review that with Barry and Jamie.
But may also want some reference to that we are putting in 400, because then it shows, they're not the first money in, we're now, so they're helping advance a much larger project that we're already partially funding. So maybe working a line in there too, showing we have some skin in the game too with that, so.
On that project, if the legislature found $8 million for this, would that change the other project we talked about today?
Because that's all offline, it's all off Wall Street.
Oh, yeah.
So you jog off right
For the
there,
bike.
and then it's actually, it makes a lot of sense to be really a signing and striping project because it's not the most straight route, but once you get through the neighborhood, then you've got a straight shot right up into Whitworth.
And Kyle, you had mentioned last week a couple other projects that we haven't got together yet to talk about.
I was more wanting to discuss just the preservation need. And as they fund these projects, our ability to be able to maintain, it's great. Everybody loves the capital dollars and the big ass on there, but if we can't take care of them, then we just have a deteriorating asset out there. And what we had to already cut a substantial portion of our preservation budget this year in order to stay within our means. That problem is only growing. And what we're able to do in order to take care of these roads with chip seals and overlays and crack seal is declining every year, because our bucket of funds is fixed and just starting to trend downward. And the projects that we are fortunate enough to get funded, that's wonderful, but it's that ability to take care of it. And how far we can go when we put our own crews on the roads. I mean, what we're paying for chip seal is unbelievably economical compared to what we pay for capital projects. And so I know it's not the sexy thing, but at least throwing on the table that some infusion of preservation funds would really help us keep our system intact.
There's support for us to work on a general statement around that?
And there's usually a push for it. In Olympia, there are legislators that'll get together and
Wasac would
advocate.
have a-
But like Kyle said, preservation's not sexy. New roads are sexy.
Well, and the state DOT is having the same issue. I mean,
It's a huge issue.
It's a huge issue, so.
And we're having, and the state likes to, they've been making many comments about it's getting harder and harder to get these capital projects delivered. There's just so many steps along the way, it's taking longer and longer. But what's wonderful, I mean, we have the staff, we have the equipment, we have the chip, we buy the oil, we can get out there immediately and put those dollars on the ground.
Has that been something in past years where we've asked for an infusion for maintenance and gotten something related to that was different from the legislature?
John asked Conside.
I think preservation's always been that hard one to get funding for.
It's not as exciting.
Yeah.
I
Leave it
got
to
$2
the
million
local.
to preserve what you already have. It's not a
Well,
headline.
and they've tried to
No
put
ribbon
money in the
cutting.
Public Works Trust Fund, so that way small counties can go seek those dollars, but the legislature's really good at sweeping some of those dollars out or using those dollars for other purposes, and so leaving even fewer and fewer dollars for, especially the small counties that don't have resources, so it's always been an issue.
An alternative idea would be on these capital projects, we have to come up with matches. And we do a good job leveraging those dollars. But if there's a willingness to remove the match requirements, that leaves dollars here locally that could go towards our maintenance. If they don't want to fund maintenance, then allow the match to be greatly reduced so that we have the funds locally to actually invest in the maintenance.
And then do you guys this is just held over from previous years, the divide between urban requests and the single rural request? Simple formatting question, should they all be together? Do you like them called out separately? I just kind of, as I was reformatting to put numbers, it hit me there's only one on that list.
Yeah, I
Seemed
don't,
kind of lonely.
I mean, because like even Glen Rose is still
Glen Rose
considered
is,
rural.
semi, historically
Yeah.
rural.
And the Sullivan 32nd is considered fairly rural. That's
Should I just put them all on one list
So
then?
I just put them all in one.
Okay, so I'll scrap. And then one other piece that I have is Arian with Broadlink put together this one pager on broadband.
So just a second, Commissioner Walden.
Yeah, I still had something I wanted to comment on with so something we talked about last week was with disaster relief, fire response. I think it's really great to have that right up at the top and front and center. But then we discussed maybe some other, wildfire resiliency, like then you have support land use legislation underneath that. I think I also suggested we look into if there's planning dollars for wildfire.
Creating a pot of local money.
Yeah, well, I think that I remember Mike saying maybe we should have like some sub bullets but I don't know if it really goes there because like the fire, like the disaster relief is specific for aiding individuals. But then there's also things we could do maybe to prevent in the future, right? Like fire, suppress fires or prevent fires. So I don't know if that's like a separate category. But I would be happy to, I think I have a meeting with Chandra.
Yes.
Chandra pretty soon. So I can ask her if there's like, you know, if
Something
we
we can work
need,
from.
because if there's already some planning dollars and we don't need to ask for it, then that's great, but I'll, you know.
I think she and Chandra and Mayor Cooper's pretty on top of what some of the requests are, because I know I'm asking her to help me on the federal priorities list for Wasac as we look at what federal priorities are for wildfire relief, because my understanding wildfire is not considered like a tornado or hurricane. And so we've got to get that designation into the state as well as into the federal legislation. And so it's considered the same type of natural disaster. So I don't know exactly what that is, but I'm trying to work with Mayor Cooper on that. And
But that makes sense. Maybe, well, I'd be happy to follow up on that, but obviously that should be a huge federal priority to get these disasters included. But I think if we're talking about like
But I don't know if
land
we have to
use
do it
and
at the
other
state
things.
level first
Yeah.
to then, be able to say we're getting and taking care of it at the state level to the fed. So I mean, I think we need, have those conversations and questions. I think there's just gonna be more surrounding this to finalize it. And Commissioner French, when you first started talking about it, I think raised his hand, so I don't.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the state legislature has already funded a statewide study on wildfire interface. So that study is underway currently and stuff. So I doubt that the state is going to want to do anything until they get that report back. And they might get it back in this legislative session. I don't know when the deadline is, but that study is already underway.
Okay, and then I think it's just trying to figure out how we need to identify wildfires as natural disasters, and if that, again, Mayor Cooper has been pretty involved in it, thinking through what it needs to be, so I think we'll talk to her as well, just as there's some policy stuff that we could look at. But more to come on that.
Commissioner Cuny, do you want to speak to this or me to speak to it?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to speak to it. So at Wasac, there's a Wasac Broadband Committee that's been meeting from several different counties across the state. Arian's there on my behalf. And so we're trying to get a proviso, governor's proviso together. I think we're seeing that we need to figure out each county has different and unique needs as it comes to broadband and as the BEAD money comes out. And so if you're trying to figure out how that works, the state broadband office has not, I guess I would say they probably don't have capacity to do that. I think they tried to have WSU Extension do that and that didn't work right. And so we're looking at this separate proviso. And so I would just want to make sure that we're supporting that. I think Al, they talked about a little bit at LSC. I don't know that Axel did a great job explaining it. But I did ask Arian to kind of put together some talking points from a state perspective as well as from a federal perspective, because it's money that's coming from the feds down to the state. So that way I can make sure on the federal list, it's there, because there's several commissioners that are very, just want to make sure that it's on top of mind for everybody, how these dollars are coming out. So that's what this is.
Jumping to the federal, the timeline's a huge issue. We're up against matching money that has to be spent by certain timelines, and the feds have pushed back their grants over a year at this point. And we only have another 14 months that we can use our funds as matching, or we roll the dice in those following 2 years of possibly clawback based on current timeline goals. So to me, on the federal side, when we get there, timeline's a huge issue, because they're allowing us to use ARP as the match. Normally you can't use federal match, but you can on this. But now they're making the timeline such that that's not going to work.
So I would say, you know, this, you guys need to take a look at this and read through it, and if you have questions, ask, because I don't want to make a decision today since it's the first time people are seeing it.
I can work with Arian on getting it down to bullet point size for next week. Any plain addition to what we talked about, that's everything I have to do.
Might get I'm sure this will be the case for lots of organizations, but I'm sure we'll get a lot of, this is a supplemental, what part of short session don't you understand on some of this, but that's okay. Still a worthwhile exercise, so.
Many of these things take multiple years. And so
It's about getting the conversation started sometimes.
there's a long game and the short game when it comes to.
And it's just that awareness, because sometimes otherwise they're not aware, and when they start having other conversations, like, oh, wait, Spokane County was talking about that, so.
Be ready for the window of opportunity.
Yes.
Mid-January, we'll be like, why did we not put this on? Yeah, I mean, tons of stuff pops up that we didn't even know was gonna
The
be an
great thing
issue.
about these is you can adapt them.
Exactly,
That's
exactly.
right. A living document.
We don't get them professionally printed.
Don't
Any
frame
other
it.
comments from you, Mike Burgess?
Nope. Just look forward to, we'll get that list narrowed down because you all know that we got to focus on a couple of those capital projects and transportation projects, and I know you'll work through that process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can we bring it back again next week to keep forcing priorities?
Sure.
Perfect.
Encouraging.
Nicer word, yes.
Okay, we already took care of our miscellaneous. I'm gonna have to take off, it's 11:30, we're not done yet, so I'll let you run the meeting. Is there any other executive session items that you guys have?
There are, I think, 3, 2 of which can go this afternoon, absolutely no problem, though I think there is one related to labor negotiations that was anticipated for the
I was just gonna ask, I mean, we can kick it to after the 2 o'clock, but I think at some point, I think for all our benefit, discussing what the format is for tonight's meeting, kind of how that goes. I know one of the jurisdictions last night did not seem to adhere to the equal time, and I just want to make sure that we are holding our hearing correctly. So,
We have published it in that manner, and I think we have everything set up to go and be in compliance with all of those standards.
And we'll just see as people sign up, Chris and I will be
Right.
talking, which is why sign up starts at 5 o'clock. The doors open down below at 5:15. The sign up starts on the main floor, which I think we posted all that. So I can try to hopefully have the meeting run as smoothly as possible. So, no comments, fine. Okay. So and just, happy to have it all run smoothly. That's the goal.
Well-oiled machine.
So from a staff perspective, we're gonna be sitting in that built-in desk on the main floor. Just anticipating maybe more people than normal, so that there's not a big lobby. So we'll do sign-ins on the main level, but we do different sheets, whether they sign in as a pro or a con. And then we'll go from there. The sign-ups open at 5, doors to the chamber at 5:15.
Sounds like we can hold off on all the exec sessions to this afternoon. So everyone can be present.
you can adjourn this then.
Then we will adjourn at this point in time, and we will come back at 2 o'clock.